I was born in Boston. My mom was working as a journalist at the time, and you know, through a series of I like to call them miracles. Both my brother and I were born in the U.S. and then we went back. We lived in Haiti until 2004, and that's when we came back. And I finished high school and college. Uh, but during my growing up in Haiti, I almost died 3 times by the time I was 10 because of situations with electricity, blackouts, and whatnot. So I developed an obsession with fixing that problem, and that's that's how I end up getting my degree in electrical engineering, and going through the solar decathlon, working in the architectural engineering space, and now running my own startup that is looking to really redefine how electricity is generated and
Okay.
distributed. Yeah, so right now, for the most part, it's shifting, but for the most part, electricity is generated by taking some dead thing and burning it, for the most part.
Okay.
Um, and you take the heat from that, you transfer the heat to some kind of fluid, which is typically steam or compressed air, and you run that through a turbine. It spins, and that's how you generate electricity. In emerging markets, it's the complete opposite. They have electricity for 2 to 3 hours,
Wow.
and that's if they're lucky that it stays. It comes on every day, and it's a regular occurrence. Sometimes you can go 3-4 days without electricity, and you learn how to make do.
Wow. And so for the few hours that it is coming on in emerging markets, is it typically during the day and not at night that it's coming on?
Uh, that I can't speak for all markets, but when I was growing up in Haiti, it was completely sporadic. There was a time where it would always come on. I love this. It would always come on exactly at 3:30 to 6. And I remember those times distinctively because there was a show that would come on at 4 that would play cartoons for an hour, and then
Yeah.
a movie would get started,
Right.
and everyone would find a movie to watch. We would all watch a different movie, and then once the electricity was gone, we would gather on the porch, backyard, wherever, and by the moonlight just literally recite an entire movie. Like, I saw Lord of the Rings long before I saw Lord of the Rings.
Right, right, right. That is
So
hilarious. And
yeah,
it's
and
only the first half of the movie though, right? So it would cut short.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you don't even get the whole movie, so some kids, they would just make up the ending, and you
Right.
take it, it's whatever.
I
It's
love
not
that.
that serious. Yeah, you laugh about it, and those are actually some of my fondest memories growing up in Haiti, because there was a real sense of community. Like, people, they knew each other, they depended on each other. We played with each other. Um, there's a saying that says, "Your neighbor's your family." I'm translating, of course, but looking back at it now, coming here in the States, and I'm like, wow, I don't know any of I don't know if it's because of the age, or because everybody's got their own thing going on, but like, I don't know any of my neighbors. But yeah, that was one time where it was always 3:30 to 6:30. I remember that. But there were times when it would come on at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
my mom would have to wake up and iron uniforms and get going.
Right.
So it was very sporadic, and the same thing was happening to the water, actually, because even though we had plumbing all the way to our house, it wasn't coming through all the time, because for whatever reason, which I then later found out, oh, it's probably the water sanitation plant, their pump is not running, so they can't pressurize the system and push the water out to people.
Right.
um, but yeah, it affects everything, and it affects everybody.
Right. You mentioned on your profile I read about combining basically renewable energy and clean water for all humans everywhere, regardless of any type of demographic, right? So how are you working towards that?
So tackling water was what I wanted to start with, because the numbers for that are even worse. But I realized that, with the amount of fresh water that we have available on the planet, it's going to be a lot more efficient to just focus on desalination, because most of the world's population is close to the ocean. We live on some shore of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to convert salt water into fresh drinking potable water is the way to go, but you have to have electricity to do it. Right now, the method that is most prominent for that is reverse osmosis, where they basically just take salt water, they filter it, and they pump it through, a series of membranes. And it takes a lot of electricity to run those pumps. So if you don't have electricity, forget
Right.
it. You're going to have to evaporate water using the sun or something. And, even though it's effective, it's not scalable. You can't
Mm-hmm.
you can't provide clean drinking water to millions and millions of people that way. I mean, you can, but it's going to be very difficult, and we're not going to do it in time.
So you had mentioned also, obviously you translated that phrase from Haitian, right? And you speak Haitian, French, and English?
Yeah, it's Haitian Creole, and I mean, growing up in Haiti, you had no choice. Haitian Creole didn't actually become like an officially taught language until I was in, I want to say, seventh grade.
Wow.
So it's a very, yeah, I mean, people spoke it for hundreds of years,
Mm-hmm.
but in the government, French was the official language. Creole wasn't recognized. So a lot of people spoke it. There was a lot of stigma around it, but it wasn't something that was taught in school, let alone something that was welcomed in a professional setting. But right when I got to seventh grade, that's when the conversation completely shifted, and they started teaching it. They started teaching the grammar and teaching people how to write it. So it's very interesting, because at this point now in my life, I've lived in the US longer than I have in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
And when people ask me, how you don't have an accent, this and that and the third, I tell them, well, first, I came here very young, so that has a lot to do with it. And second, growing up in Haiti, it wasn't just Haitian Creole and French that were taught. English and Spanish were also taught.
Okay.
So I grew up learning four languages. Developed countries, a lot of them, in my opinion, have sacrificed what's really important in the name of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's a show that just dropped on Netflix recently. Zac Efron's in it.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Down to
Down to
earth.
Earth.
Yeah.
Yes, Down to Earth. And I absolutely loved the show, because you can see, going from Paris to Iceland to Costa Rica, and the quality of life. I was like, yeah, Costa Rica, things are not as convenient, but I think they're healthier. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're happier. I think they feel more connected, and they're clearer on their purpose on the planet. Whatever the situation, always be grateful, and know that it's happening for you. There is going to be a moment where you're going to be able to say, hey, you know what? That may have looked like a disadvantage at the time, but now I have an advantage because I went through that experience. So always, anything that's happening, it's happening for you.